thank you first off for joining me.
Of course, my pleasure.
And yeah, my first question is, I guess, for you, what are the fundamental differences between obviously your journalism writing for newspapers and such, and obviously the screenwriting that you undertook for this project?
Yeah, it's interesting because in some ways the differences are really fundamental. Like in my job as a journalist, which is always my primary work. Like if I make things up, I get fired, right? Like that's
yeah, exactly.
My career's over. So you know, it's I think like one of the things that I've really enjoyed about a little bit of screenwriting is having a little bit more freedom to sort of build characters and to imagine your way into people rather than relying entirely on the things that I've seen and documented myself when I'm there as a journalist. In other ways, though, they're fairly similar. Like as a journalist, I'm always looking for stories where I'm arriving hopefully at a moment of tension, and I'm going to see something happen. Like I do sort of narrative journalism, so the stories are built really heavily on scene and dialogue, like scripts are, and it's those stories also depend on finding good characters, finding people who are compelling, and then following what happens to their lives. So there are some similarities, but mostly when I'm doing journalism, I make very, very sure not to confuse the two, because otherwise I would lose my job if I was making anything up.
So my next question is, obviously over the 3-year period it took to do the writing for the script, what were the challenges that you faced in terms of obviously bringing together fundamental facts and then sort of melding that into a fictional piece?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, first it was a lot of research. So, Rodrigo, the director, and I, and the co-writer on the script, we took trips to Michigan to spend time with Libby and Amanda, the real women who the movie's based on. I'd already spent a lot of time with them writing the original story there as a journalist, but we went back for sort of more inspiration, more material to tour through sort of the neighborhoods in Detroit where Amanda had gone through kind of the worst parts of her addiction. So there was a pretty long research phase, and then probably like any writing project, there were a lot of different iterations. There were moments in the script where we thought, we wanted to have a more flashback heavy script where there would be moments where we were seeing her in active addiction. But I think eventually decided that keeping it in the very uncertain contemporary moment of the course of these 4 days was the most true to their experience. And I think one of the hard things about addiction is there aren't very clean endings, right? And the truth of Amanda's story is it hasn't ended. Like it's ongoing. I mean, since I wrote the first piece about her in the Washington Post, she's relapsed and recovered and relapsed again a half dozen times. It's the cycle that they live their lives in. So I think another challenge for us in the script was finding a way to have an ending that hopefully would feel satisfying, but also true, and honoring the fact that there's hope and recovery, but there's also always this tenuous sense of what's going to come next, because certainly that's the truth of Libby and Amanda's life still day to day.
Yeah. So I mean, that actually feeds into my next question, which was for you, how important was it that the experiences remain grounded in a reality and not become something which was very much Hollywood or very much a cinematic thing?
Yeah, it was super important, and honestly, it was the most important thing to Libby and Amanda too. I think when they decided that they were okay with this being fictionalized into a film project, their number one concern was wanting it to do justice to the truth of what addiction is like for families. So that also meant that during filming, for instance, Glenn there's a Facebook page called The Addict's Mom, which it's a heartbreaking Facebook page with 30,000 members. Every day it's parents basically just narrating their daily experiences of hey, last night my kid disappeared, I can't find them. Has anybody seen a person who looks like this sleeping in this area in this part of town? I got a call last night from my son saying he's now in jail in Arizona. Like it's just a daily sort of deluge of heartbreak, and I think Glenn decided, rightfully, and I think it was really helpful to her, that she wanted to read those posts every day before we were shooting, and to sort of get in the mindset of kind of marinating in some of that. So, and the same thing for Mila, like talking to and spending time with Amanda, and and even, you know, watching videos of what it was like for addicts to go through withdrawal, and getting a better sense of that too. So yeah, I think it's the tragic thing is it's such a common reality. Like it's you know, we have 140 people every day overdosing and dying just on opioids in the United States. So it's like, this is it's something that's playing out in so many families around the country, that it also feels like if you get it wrong, you're doing an injustice, not just to the film, but also to all these families who are living it every day. So I think,
as I said, the idea, I guess, you don't want to glamorize it, and then you don't want to trivialize it in any way either. So
yeah, exactly.
That's
exactly
a balancing act. It sort of leads me on to my next thought, which would be, as a platform, how do you think cinema will broaden the debate in terms of the opioid epidemic that is currently going on in America?
I mean, I think it has a lot of potential power, you know, I mean, especially right now, just culturally. And I think about this a lot as a journalist and as a writer who writes books. I mean, I'm lucky to write for the Washington Post, which has a really high readership, you know, compared to other publications. But when you write a story for the Washington Post, or when you write a book, I mean, a best-selling book might sell, you know, 50,000 copies, 75,000 copies to be a best-selling book. And whereas, you know, movies and TV obviously have the power to reach a lot more people, and people that might not be the conventional audiences for these kinds of stories. So, you know, I think how I think about always my job and my work is trying to find stories that matter, and that potentially can make a difference in the way people think about the big issues that we're facing as a world, and can change the way some of us think about what other people's experience of the world is like, and then trying to find the engine to like give those stories a place in the world. And you know, certainly like movies and film, I think you have a chance to reach and also to move people in a way that you don't in many of these other mediums.
Very, very true. You touched on briefly, I think, in your first answer, with regards to your writing style, because I've read it a number of times, and it comes across to me as quite a cinematic thing. In fact, it's quite overtly cinematic. So my question is to what extent, when you go from subject to subject, did you change your process? Is your process always the same, or is it dictated by the subject matter that you approach?
Well, I mean, in my journalism, I'd say my approach is almost always the same, and the subjects vary very widely. Like but usually what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to arrive in somebody's life as an observer, and not only interview them and you know, do record searches about what's happening in their lives, and interview all these people around them, but I'm hoping to be there at a time when I can see something for myself. I mean, that's when stories are the most powerful, because that's when instead of a story reading like I'm reciting a bunch of facts and information and quotes that people told me, instead, hopefully it feels like you're in that car with Libby and Amanda as they're driving past the trap house where Amanda's gotten high all these times. And rather than hearing me narrate that experience, you're hearing them talk to each other. And it's, you know, I think the great and powerful things about any kind of narrative, whether it's a movie, documentary, or a great book or work of journalism, is that hopefully, rather than feeling like you're being told something, it feels a little bit like you've been brought up to this clear pane of glass, and you're watching this experience happen for yourself, and you're thinking not about the creators, but about the characters, about the people that the film is about, and therefore the conclusions that you take away from that feel like your own conclusions. It feels like you've seen or experienced or felt something in some fractional way for yourself. And I think those are the most powerful conclusions, and those are the conclusions that stick with us, rather than being told to think something or told to believe something. So I think always in my journalism, I'm looking for, how can I make this a story that immerses somebody in the experience of what these people are going through?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, within the article, you've got elements of internal monologue. You have dialogue scenes, and obviously you have exposition within the opening. So it reads very much like a short story. It suggested to me potentially the problem that may come up in terms of you remaining impartial towards your subject when you're writing on subjects of national importance. How difficult is it sometimes to maybe remain impartial and not bring yourself into the article?
Yeah, what a great question. And the truth is, it is impossible. And also, I think sometimes it's a false conceit as a journalist to believe that you can or that you should remain entirely impartial to the people that you're writing about. Not that I'm arriving in their lives as an advocate. I'm not there to solve their problems. I'm there to write about their problems honestly and illuminate them. But at the same time, if I'm with Libby and Amanda and I don't feel anything, if I don't care in any way, if I don't experience, if I'm not moved by it, how can I ever hope that somebody who's never met them, who's never been in that car with them, is going to feel it or be moved by it? So I think like the idea of I think of it more as how can I be fair rather than being impartial, because it's being impartial is not it's not a realistic standard as a human being, and it shouldn't be. Like all of us, I hope, care about each other and are moved by the people that we meet and see and the things that we experience. So I actually kind of try to lean into, I'm trying to find stories that make me care. Because if I don't care, I don't believe a reader or a viewer is going to be able to care either.
Yeah, you have to have an emotional connection, I think, to any subject matter that you write about. Otherwise, why are you doing it?
Yeah, and otherwise, what's the point? Like it just is. I think that's exactly right.
Exactly. So in a broader sense, what would you like audience to? I'm gonna take some coffee. I've seen your coffee cup.
Yeah, go for it. I'm pulling coffee up all the time.
In a more broad sense, what would you like the audiences to maybe take away with them when they come out the movie, or when they stop obviously watching it, streaming it, or whatever? What reaction would you prefer?
I think, addiction, tragically, and it's getting better, but it's still the case that certainly in this country, and I would say around the world, it's really stigmatized. And for Libby, the real life woman that Glenn plays in the movie, for years, like all she was thinking about was Amanda and her daughter and what was happening with her, but she was too ashamed to talk to anybody around her about Amanda and what she was going through. And I think addicts and their families often feel like they're going through an experience sort of in their own cocoon of misery and feeling judged for it and feeling huge amounts of shame. And of course, for addicts, like that shame goes right back into the place of like craving and need and addiction, because you're trying to escape all these feelings of hurt. So I guess I hope one basic result, from the film and also from like the work that we can do, as a world is to destigmatize addiction and to treat it as the illness and the mental illness that it is, and to decriminalize when possible, and to help people get better rather than making them feel ashamed or othered for the addiction that they're going through.
Yeah, that seems like it's a very, very worthy aim at the end of I think anything that you do. I have one more question for you, Eli, and then I will leave you in peace for the rest of the day. It's completely off topic. Can you describe for me your perfect Sunday afternoon?
Wow, perfect Sunday afternoon. Sure. So I live in Oregon. Unbelievable, like hiking trails. The Oregon coast is really beautiful. So I guess I'd say my perfect Sunday afternoon would be probably a trail run. Love trail running on the trails out here, followed by like a stop at a brewery, maybe a nice IPA, maybe two, and then a family dinner with our kids are 9, 7, and 5. So it helps to have one IPA before that family dinner, but always a treat. That's outside and a brewery sounds like an ideal. Really, that's an ideal Tuesday afternoon too. But
I'd say that's an ideal any day, really.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thank you so much for your time, Eli. It's been an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks, Martin. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for all the really thoughtful questions.